Ever since Storm King was defeated, Capper has been offered by Twilight and her friends to stay in Ponyville. Ever since he didn't felt that he wanted to go back to his old homeland. He just felt more home in Ponyville. And at first he had many of the ponies there were skeptical or a bit scared about him since he was one of the few non-pony creatures. But after a while though, they all accepted him, embraced him as a friend. And for that, he even started working for Verity as an assistant. But he did actually work for Twilight as a sort of an assistant teacher sometimes at the school. And he actually felt connected to some of the other ponies and other students there, like Smolder, Jonah, Gallus, and even the others, because they were only one of the few non-pony students. And since then, he felt connected more to them, and since they felt connected to him. But he still had a great time with his pony friends. But after about a year after he moved to Ponyville, he started to acting differently. Sometimes when he didn't work, he just walked around in town, either to the market or just to the park, and sit down and just by himself. Even then, his friends had started getting to notice something was a bit different about their friend. But he always said to them that he enjoyed to be had some free time by himself so that he can just relax and just enjoy the day. And they all bought it. Until one day though that even Spike had heard Capper was crying in his own room. And even Spike asked him if something was wrong. But Capper always said, "No, no, Spike, he's fine. I just had a bad dream. That's all." Are you sure? Yeah, it happens. I had some bad dreams on the nights, so don't worry. All right, okay, Spike Capper. And even Spike told his friends about this, like especially Twilight, and they were all just worried about it. But they also thought that he maybe had some nightmares and cried for. Since Twilight had some nightmares when she was young, and she always cried about them, it was terrifying. So she can relate on that. But the truth is that he always wanted to be alone. Because every time when he was in the park, he saw most of the time couples. And seeing them being together, it hurt him. Knowing they had a special sun pony, but he didn't. All his friends had special sun pony. Twilight with Flash, Spike with Rarity, Fluttershy with Discord, Soren with Rainbow with Soren, and even Applejack with Caramel. But he was the only one of their friends who didn't have any a special sun pony. It did happen that Rarity had put out some blind dates for him, but unfortunately none of the dates didn't work out. So, but he appreciated her help, but he told her that he preferred not to be dating for some time, and she expected that. So after a while, but even Spike had even noticed that even more as time passed, Camper started to get acting with strange. He get more distant from his friends. Because when he first moved to Pune, he was always smiling, happy, but after some time that he became even more distant. And then one day he had asked Discord and Big Mac if they could let Camper join them in their role-playing game nights at the castle, and both agreed since both had noticed that since Camper were a bit lonely. So they thought maybe a game night of role-playing games could cheer him up, so they invited him. At first, he weren't much attention to it. Capper weren't much as into game night. but he gave it a try. And after a while, he started to like it, but still was very hurtful. And even after the game was over, he spent some time with Big Mac outside the castle just before he was going home. He just asked her, Big Mac, yeah, yep, do you know if there is any mayor in town I can perhaps date? I mean, I have been lonely as you noticed. Yep, how you noticed. And there might be a few mayors then you can date. What about you? Are you dating any pony? Me? No. I used to date Mr. Shirley for some time, but it didn't work out for us. I'm sorry to hear that. It is okay. I'm used to it. But then Big Capper jokingly said, so if you wouldn't date a mayor, would you perhaps maybe, I don't know, let's say wanna go out on a date with me? And Big Mac just said, well, maybe. I haven't considered it, but sure. And Big Mac was surprising to see that to Capper, who was just, seriously? Yep. So they decided to try to get on a date on the next day. Both actually decided to meet at the Sweet Apple Acres at the Apple Orchards at about 3 p.m. When Capper went to the Sweet Apple Acres the next day at 3 p.m., he met that Big Mac had a basket, so he took her to a nearby area where she had a picnic. And at first, both were awkwardly silent. They had no idea what to bring as a topic. Even if small talked about the weather, their work, but otherwise there was just nothing. They had something to talk about. But then Big Mac asked, Camper, how was your old home like? And Camper, he had no idea except to say, well, it is much different from this place. I mean, from the question, I was homeless, orphan at a young age. I didn't have that much friends, except for one, Shanner. We all looked after each other, stole money, food, in order to survive each single day. Everything was just fine until Storm King invaded our home and we had to escape in an airship. Our airship crashed in the desert and we ended up in a desert town. And we stayed there for some time after he then later betrayed me. And the rest of the story you know, he said. Yeah. And Capper asked about his family. I mean, he heard that his parents had passed away, and Big Mac explained that his parents passed away sometimes after that his sister Apple was born, and that was quite young. He had no idea, but he felt that they had something in common. Capper had lost both his parents at also a young age, and that was something the both could connect to. Even after this small talk they had, he tried to bring up some more funny jokes too, and surprising, Big Mac just always laughed his jokes, even though it's terrible ones. And even after the picnic was over, they went back to the counter at the farm, and there Capper said, I actually enjoyed our date, Big Mac, and I wonder if you would go out again. Sure. I mean, I do care about you, and I had to admit this date were surprisingly amazing. That was a good one I had in a long time, and both decided to be give it a try. And even after that, all they had to even announce to their friends, family, and his family about their been dating, but they all were open and supportive. And after that, much of this day went on several more days to the movies, having picnics and even restaurants, and just having a great time. But one day, Big Mac told Capper that he wouldn't be home for some time. He was going to see his cousin Braber in Appaloosa. They needed some help there, so and even Capper didn't mind it. And about a week later, Big Mac came back home, and everything was going well between them. They never fought any against each other from any simple topic they had. Even if they had some issue or they had something that they disagree about, they always worked out the problem, and they always did. But they did have one big fight, and they didn't see each other or even speak to each other for about almost a week. And after they realized how stupid this big fight were, they apologized. And even after this time had passed, Big Mac had realized how much Capper really meant to him. They had so much in common. They liked the same things, music, they liked the same food, and they had so much almost a big same at the same deep childhood by losing a special song pony, at least a family member. Even Capper, he felt so home to be in Ponyville, but especially to be with some pony like Big Mac, who made his heart whole again. And they even enjoyed to spend time with Discord and Spike at the role playing game nights at the castle. And now, by this time, Capper had this amazing time. He had actually get into this role he played with his friends. But in most of the time, though, he had this amazing time. But did and even during the first Heartswarming Eve, he celebrated with Big Mac's family, and it was an amazing time. Even during the New Year's Eve, both made a New Year's resolution, a New Year's promise, by telling themselves they would always be together, no matter what, and they always want to be with some pony, and that's supposed to be with each other. For next couple of months after this New Year's Eve was over, everything was back to back to this normal. Applejack had had to be helping Big Mac at the farm when he was injured by hurting one of his legs during an accident. But luckily it wasn't too serious. It was just a sprinkled hoof, and then he had to get rest for some time. So Capper, he visited the Sweet Apple Acres more often then, just to see how Big Mac was were during the time. And Big Mac just appreciated that how much Capper meant to him, and how much they really could care about him. And after that Big Mac was back to health, he actually took Capper on a date to the park where they had a picnic. But though, even they haven't been together for a year, Big Mac brought a question to Capper by asking him if he wanted to marry him, something that Capper didn't expect to hear, especially from Big Mac, and so soon. But Capper already knew that Big Mac was the one he had loved, has been waiting for. So he said yes immediately. And what their friends were told about this, Pinky, she threw one of the biggest parties they ever seen to celebrate it. And even then though, even Big Mac had asked Discord to be his best man, and Capper had asked Spike to be his best man, and Pinky to be the ring bearer of all the other friends. And even after the wedding itself, it was a big party that both Discord and Pinky had organized. And even Pinky, of all the other friends, was just happy to see Capper and Big Mac smiling and looking so deep into each other's eyes. And for them, it was like the whole world was just so still, and that they were the only ones there. They were just amazingly happy to be with the pony they loved the most. And even afterwards, they even Big Mac's, Big Mac's distant relatives, extended family, welcomed them, Capper to the family, and they had actually invited the entire Apple family from across Equestria, which Big Capper didn't exactly know that Big Mac had such a big family, but he was just happy to be there. And later, there was time for them to go on their honeymoon, and they actually went to Las Vegas, which they stayed for a whole week, with enjoying all the great times there, but enjoying the rides, the magical shows, the romantic dinners, and they had amazing time there. About a year later, after that, they start talking about it was time to start a family. So they had asked Twilight for help, and she wanted to be the surrogate mother to help them. So she used DNA both from Capper and Big Mac in order to combine with the magic spell she had learned to in order to get just made it a baby for him. And they later learned they were going to have a son. They talked about what name to give him, but they made up the perfect name. And a few months later, the son was born, and they named him Apple Mac Fur. Even their son, Apple Mac Fur, was really energetic while growing up. He was always helping his family, always helping around the farm, even as a small child. He always want to be around, but even his parents said that he was made to, that he could have been very too young to helping around. So instead of helping his parents, he helped his great grandma, Granny Smith, of baking. Even he a lot spent time with his aunt Pink Applejack and even Apple. But he looked up to Applebloom for the most as a role model because she was the most funniest one. She knows a lot of games and she had a lot of stories to tell about when she and her friends were trying to get a cutie mark. And he listened to all the stories, all the attempts they had to find their true purpose in life. And he always laughed to listen to some of the fun stories, which they didn't mind because they even laughed themselves to realizing all the how their all attempts to even to get a cutie mark made them to realize even how much they did to the end, even though they always failed, but it was happy to see all the good times they did. And even when Apple MacFur was growing older, he had found his true purpose in life. He wanted to be an apple farmer, and he even trained with Applejack. He trained to increase his own strength that he was able to plucking some apples from the trees by kicking the tree. And all the training with her paid off. And when he was about 12, he was strong enough and even allowed to help his family even then. And he was really surprised at both his parents that he was able to pull a cart just by himself. And they then explained to him he was a true apple farmer. What about his future? They asked him if he always want to be an apple farmer or he wanted to be maybe something else, like an author, actor, or perhaps even something else. But he said, no, I always want to be an apple farmer since that is in my family, and I always want to keep that as a tradition. Hearing that, Big Mac just cried to realize Hearing that from his own son made him happy and really proud. Even learning much more about his own family from his grandparents, and even after that his own great grandma Grandsmith one day passed away, he took it very hard because they were very close. But Big Mac had always told him she would always be in his heart. And he even Apple McFur had told his father for some reason he can still feel Grandsmith's presence even in the kitchen or at the farm, but most of all in the kitchen. And hearing that from his own son made Big Mac just cry, knowing that even that his grandmother is gone, she will always be around to protect his family, or at least just watch over them. And one day, when Apple McFur was about 25 years old, he met this beautiful mare in from Ponyville. They start dating, and after about 4 years, they were married. And then after being married for 2 years, they had two daughters of their own, twins. And even Big Mac were happy, and even Capper were just happy to know now they were even grandparents. And that's how Big McIntosh and Capper found a true love and got a big family. The end.